Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World Collective Energy Share. Happy almost December, right?
I know, the day before.
Feel ahead of the game because we actually got most, like I was saying right before we got on, we got most of our harder decorations up yesterday. I was laughing saying, we wished for a big open house. I'm like, and you didn't realize what goes along with that, including taking all the big friggin' ladders out to get everything up.
Right.
But it was fun. It was good. It was nice. Makes the house feel cozy, brought all the plants inside. And yes, I did end up hanging them up. And I'm like, I know that's just going to cause me to have more plants next year. But
It's always a thing.
yeah, it's always so. I was like, so then I'll worry about that next year. That's not today.
Right.
That's not the present. It looks really nice where we decided to put the plants. So that's what I said. We put it all in, and then I was like, well, this looks really nice. And Scott's like, yeah. I said, yeah, it'll be hard to put everything back outside in the spring. But it was good timing because I think we're supposed to get down to like 28 tomorrow night. So
yeah, we had, I think it was supposed to be like 38 last night, and it ended up being like 34, 36, depending on which thermometer I looked at. And then tonight's supposed to be like 28. So
yeah,
we got all ours in. We had the last 4 that were still out, and we got those in last evening.
yeah.
So we're all buttoned down.
Yes, us too. Although now the back porch just looks bare.
I know. It's like, oh, are we moving out?
I know. Where's
Sarah?
Where's everything? And of course, the cats are like, what are you doing? You're changing. Good morning, Gloria. Good morning, Nicole.
Yeah.
So anyway, so today on Ascended World, we're sort of going back to our roots. We decided where we would just come on and have our conversation and see where it led us, because it tends to stick with the stream of consciousness in the collective level.
Right.
When we talked on Friday, we're like, well, I'm not even quite sure where to go. And we're like, you know what, why don't we just sort of let it sit and figure out where our conversation will take us on Monday? Because that's what we used to do. And then we sort of got away with that. So got away from that, excuse me.
Right.
Yeah. So,
I know we always start these things with like, well, I had this anxiety, but it's like, I had this anxiety.
I know. I was just going to say, well, there was the anxiety waves that we're going through last week.
Right.
I mean,
I haven't experienced that to that degree in years. It was really impressive. And it was almost like,
impressive is a good word.
I would vacillate between being an observation of it going, wow, and being in it going, wow.
Right.
And I just had to breathe through it. My mind kept going, logically, what is this? What is this? Trying to put it in a box and, make sense of it. And it was almost like, I don't know. I'm not a big roller coaster rider, so I can't really make this, but I kind of think that it was almost like it was something that was just to be endured, to move through it, not to be recognized, analyzed, dissected, and then fixed. It was just to pass through it.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty much what I got too. And for me, I don't know if it was as much for you. I mean, for me, it was so almost bipolar, where it was like the day I'd wake up in the morning and feel great. I'd have great meditations, a lot of clarity, a lot of peace and calm. And then it was almost like a vampire thing where the sun would go down in the evening. And then all of a sudden this anxiety would set in. I'd be like, where did that come from?
Well, and that reminds me of, I know as my parents were getting closer to the end, they used to call that sundowning. Mm-hmm. Where the anxiety would ramp up at the end of the day. And I think that it's just prep for sleep when the veils are getting thinner and you're stepping out of the confines that you walk through your day in.
Yeah. And so look at that, because, it's funny. There was something we were PMing about with Yasmin before we got on. about, because we're going on our quarterly conclave this weekend in a remote island. Very excited, the northwestern part of the United States. And so she had said how she's got this anxiety come up before packing, and I'm like, yeah, I was thinking about that this morning, and I get that every time we get together, every time I go on a retreat, like I'm running a retreat, I get that every time I'm going, almost like right now, it's almost every time I go on a trip. And I was looking at it before as, is it because of all of the hoopla on, oh, you're going to get sick, and stay home, you have the kid. And it's like, well, really, because I don't pay attention to any of that. That doesn't really. And I'm like, no, because it was there before. Like it's just more pronounced now, right? And it's like we've put ourselves. So then this sort of maybe ties into the other anxiety stuff, because what I was looking at this morning was, is it that we're doing this to ourselves to force us to continuously flow through anxiety no matter when it comes up, right?
That's what I get. That's what I feel. Like last night I had it again, not as intense, and it was earlier in the evening, but then we were just returning from a trip, and I was thinking about the next trip, because it's like,
I know you get back yesterday and we leave Tuesday.
Right. And I just kept getting that it's, I don't want to say practice, because that.
Right. No, but you're right. Practice.
Yeah. It's that remembering that, number one, you have a choice. Mm-hmm. And number two, you're creating this. And number three, remember, you have all the answers. You know the future.
You have all the power,
right,
of creation in any way you choose, right? Regardless of what others try to tell you.
Right.
And so
actually staying away from the remembering and all that is harder than letting it in. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I really think that so much that I've been dealing with lately is more the bracing against it. Mm-hmm. And I always think of it like the wind. It's like, it's so much harder to brace against it and hold it away and buffet it than to just relax and let it go through you.
Right.
And for some reason that was really prominent in my sleep last night. And then this morning, as I got up, one of the things that I saw, which I thought was just crazy, and I haven't had a chance to look at it any more in depth, but it was almost like I was looking at my DNA, and you see the pictures, and so that's what my mental image is. And it's like there's I don't want to say a dimension, but a facet to it that when the light hits it just right, you go, and then it's gone in that instance. And it's like, that's what I feel like's the remembering.
Interesting.
Is it's just, it's you got to have all the conditions to where whether it's your guard or your mind is, thinking about something else, that you can glimpse that. And it was, and it's one of those things where it's like, you see it and you go, and it goes away right away when you do that. Because to me, that's like a contraction.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw that this morning, and I was able to recreate it like 3 or 4 times. And I was like, oh, I want to look at that better. I want to look at that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, and I think that is going to expand, because I'll tell you, that's what I'm feeling in meditation lately. When I go in meditation, it's a completely new landscape of expansive bliss, of like levels that just, and I was there before to think that I was like, oh my God, this is like something that's a completely new field. Right.
Right.
And the new level.
I used to focus so much on meditation as going out, way out. And now I get there from going in. Mm-hmm. And it's so different. And it's almost like that. I feel like that landscape of that meditation, like you're talking about, is inside me.
Well, and It's like you're talking about but like for me, it's like almost in the meditation part, it's like like into this expansion of, oh yeah, there is all of me. There's that wholeness, right?
Right.
And it isn't, but and it's like this different level of remembrance, this different level of remembering the hologram, right? I think
Right.
last week what I had texted you and said, today I was guided to do something that was sort of like fluffing up my cells, which was really awesome.
Right.
And it was like, but because we've been focusing on the hologram and remembering the hologram more so than what that we trained our minds to remember, right? And
Right.
so we've been working on that we've been focusing on that for a while. And then while I was in there, I was like, well, but also allow all the pieces and parts of you down to the cells to remember their full hologram too. And I was like, oh, ooh, that's yummy.
Right. And that's like getting back to the building blocks.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah.
And it's the same thing that you're talking about. It's like, it is going so expansive inside that it's incredible, right?
It really is.
So then it's like, well, okay, so that feels great, and then I'm great, and then that anxiety comes through, and that's really, so it's funny you said you got that guidance about flowing through, and that's all I've been guided to do is be aware, be observant, and let it flow through and go away. And it's the same as everything, like in the beginning of when we had the coronavirus outbreak, right? And so I had been guided to welcome it in, to allow it, to remember that, to acknowledge it as part of me, that it's just me as a different facet, to allow it to be a part of me and to just flow through in any way, so that then I didn't need to worry about ever getting it, because there's no friction or resistance. So there would be no sickness, right? So you got some sun there in your eyes.
Yeah, the sun moved and is hitting a glass piece on my windowsill. It's like, okay.
And then crap, what was I saying there?
Well, welcoming it in, honoring it.
Right. And so it's the same thing with the so like and then like a week and a half ago, a couple weeks ago, yeah, because my daughter had the flu several weeks ago now, and it was like a week after she stopped being sick, and it was just the flu, and I was doing something, and I came down with this feeling of like I was gonna get like the feeling at the beginning of when you were gonna get sick, and I was just like, and right away, what does the ego want to do is like, right?
Well, and it's that same
right, exactly. And I stopped and I looked at it and I said, you know what? Whatever this is, whether it's detoxing, whether it's whatever, it's important. It's a part of me. Thank you for coming here. I welcome you in. And now you can just flow right through me, because I'm not resisting you. I'm not fighting you. I'm not angry at you. I'm not like scared of you. So,
and I'm not giving you my energy.
Exactly. And so I did that, and I literally felt better within hours, and it was gone and never came back. And it was like, and it's what a different way of allowing, it's that flowing through instead of having to fight around or avoid or control, right?
Yeah.
So, and many don't get that, I think, logically, but this is a really big thing. And so, that we're talking about this anxiety, that we both were guided to do the same thing and just look at it and be like, yep, welcome, whatever you are. And thank you for your purpose, and you're a part of me, and I'll let that just.
And I honor your place in the wholeness.
Exactly. And it was just, and there were some rough edges, because that was some pretty big anxiety that's been going through.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I feel like I literally was up the whole night that night.
Yeah. And so, but then it was like, and then once it passed, it was like, oh, okay. Right. And still, and nothing tripped me up. Like I felt it there, and I might have gotten a little quieter or a little bit more, introspective during those periods. But actually, the last night that it really hit me, I was talking to my husband. I'm like, so here's that anxiety again. Don't know what it's from. So we were just talking about it, and then it just sort of, and I didn't get too analytic about it. Like you're saying, like, what is it from?
Attached to it.
Yeah. And I felt like, oh yeah, it sort of felt like this wave, and I know it's a collective thing. And of course, oh, there's a bajillion different reasons to have anxiety in the collective right now.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay,
Right.
well, I don't need to take that on. I'm just gonna let it flow through. And this whole thing about like even talking about getting ready for our trip, and it's like, I get that way. We get that way before we do every kind of retreat, right? It's always like right before there's this little bit of, I'd rather stay, like, there's the ego.
Oh, it'd be easier to just stay here.
It would be easier just to stay home. It's so cozy now. We just put all Christmas decorations.
Yeah, I know. Oh, and there's so many things I could do here.
Right. And then it's like, except the bigger voices, except that this is purposeful. That there's a reason for this.
Right.
And it's even a completely different level of consciousness when we do that kind of focused, concentrated, purposeful work together.
Right.
Even in small groups, it's pretty incredible. So it's like, okay. And so I was thinking about that. And then I was thinking about, remember, oh God, I don't know, sometime in the not too distant past, sometime this year, we were talking about, remember I was talking about how I don't know if I ever talked about it. I think I did. I don't know if we did online, but anyway, how I've always realized that I've always been slightly uncomfortable being in a body in this lifetime.
Yeah, I remember us having that conversation, but I think it's been multiple times. So I don't know which specific one you're referring to.
Well, no, and it wasn't anything specific, but I've been thinking about how, like, lately what has come up is when I've had those moments of discomfort, I look at it, why am I still having moments of being uncomfortable? And, and I'm not talking about uncomfortable with my body, that I'm not happy with my body, uncomfortable being in a body.
Period.
Yeah.
Right.
Period, right. And like, do I have to do this? And it's like, I've pushed myself through everything that I've done in my life. Right. And so looking at the anxiety thing and it's changing it from almost pushing ourselves through to flowing through with observance and consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. To be able to identify, like we're saying,
right,
through, because I feel like this is happening for everyone. It is really easy for people to just shut down because they're afraid, or because they have some anxiety,
right,
or because it's easier, right? And I posted, actually, funny enough, I didn't even connect that this morning, but I posted something about that this morning. And it's like, because we think, oh, I want to do change. I'm ready for change and all that kind of stuff. But then when we look at it, it feels overwhelming because there's so much to do. Right.
Right.
And so then we'll shut down and be like, oh, but this is more comfortable because I want to do the same things and get different results. Right.
Right.
I just want to continue. And we've talked about that actually the last several weeks with the, how much change that we go to. Right. And then we were like, oh, no, that's enough, because now I'd rather have this little bit of comfort. Right.
Right. Right.
Or what we perceive as comfort. So maybe, it felt like when I was looking at all this, that it's really that we're setting ourselves up because we're coming into such a period of huge change that if we don't engage in this habit consciously,
right,
we will implode on ourselves.
Exactly. I don't even, I want to say we'll cycle back around, but I think we're already cycling back around right now. I think that what we're doing is we will remain here doing this
until we get past it, the cycle.
Exactly.
And the only way to get out of the cycle is to get through the discomfort of getting out of the cycle.
Right. Which, easily said, harder to do is let go of the cycle.
Right.
Which is just allowing that flow through.
Right. And so everything, what I had posted about is just taking one little step, pick one thing and just start and just do it differently.
Well, and remember, I don't know if it was, no, you didn't do one last week, the week before, when you were talking about when you'd use your chimes.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
And you would say, I am the wind. And allowing the acceptance that is part of you, which, okay, I am the anxiety.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Because we'll be happy to say I am I am the sun is me, the sun and I are one.
Right.
But you say I am the anxiety, the anxiety.
Kind of go, oh,
Right?
right. But I mean, it's the same as I see it as the same as I'm the darkness.
Right. Which
Not
is
that
funny because I find that easier to say than the anxiety.
Right. Oh no, I do too. I've made much more peace with being in darkness.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But I am the anxiety, I am the fear. I am the all those things, all those
anger.
things.
I'm the anger. I'm the bigotry. I'm the hatred.
Oh, those.
Right. Because what? There's that.
Well, and there's that.
Yes.
That contraction.
Right. But it's for us to get out of the cycles, for us to accept all of it as us, right. To allow it to, again, like we were saying, it's flowing, letting it flow through us unimpeded, with gratitude, with open arms, with whatever, because then it doesn't stick. That's the key. Right. And I'm trying to think like what we could, okay. It's like birds and it's like fish, right? It's something that I actually had been really conscious about when I first learned how to scuba dive, because, when you first learn how to scuba dive, you're like fighting the current, like you panic when the current's taking you where you don't want to go, or you want to go someplace it's really hard to get there. And then you tire yourself out. And the more you scuba dive, the more you realize, I need to just be like the fish. And how did the fish fly? They fly in the water like the birds fly in the air. They feel and become one with the current, and they optimize their movements based on how the current is to get where they're going.
Right. Which is the same as a bird with the air currents.
Exactly. Yep. And so it's like, okay, and that's the same thing with these energies, right?
Right.
It's like, okay, if I don't fight the current, like, because if you fight the current when you're swimming, you're going to drown.
Right. Which, just like with the riptide, don't fight it, swim, let it take you out and then go across.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I just think birds would just tire themselves out if they tried to fly against the current.
Exactly.
Right. And then.
Well, and, even pilots now, they land according to the wind.
Yes. Yep. And why does it take shorter amount of time going one way than the other? It's usually because of how the wind is going, right?
Right. So if we look at that in terms of the anxiety,
mm-hmm.
and
the darkness and the hatred and the anger and all that
and
kind of
the fear and the sorrow and the sadness and the
suffering.
It really is. Yeah, it's that fighting that even that current which we judge we shouldn't participate in.
Right. And so logically we go, oh my God, no, because that makes me part of that. Well, it's all a part of us, right?
It is, whether you acknowledge it or not.
So you can call it, all right. So if we stop taking the labels off of it, right? We took, and we started taking the labels off of it. We took away like the term hatred or bigotry or anxiety or hurt or whatever. And we just called it the current. Right. That takes off the edge, right? And it's like, okay, well, do you want to fight the current? Because then what happens is, it's not like you become like, even though you allow the current to be a part of you, right? You also then you aren't just the current. The current is, you're utilizing the current to get you where you are to be, right? Exactly. So if you look at, anything we judge as negative, it's just a path to take us to somewhere different. Yeah. So, and I hate to even bring this up, but, like Trump and the education system. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's not like it worked until he got there. It was broken. Yeah. He didn't break it. It was already broken. So now he led us on a path to where we have the opportunity to fix it. To rebuild it. Right. To make it what it should have evolved to already. it's when we inflect our opinions and judgments on something that give it that kind of power and energy that sort of limit it to where it is, right? To say, oh, well, you know, Trump screwed up the whole education system because he's such a jerk, which is what many people say, right?
Right,
And
right.
it's not like we're advocating Trump. We're not for or against, because the key is always, as we've said from the beginning, of looking at what purpose they are, the individual is as us, because they are us.
Right,
Trump is every one of us.
right.
Trump is us. We're each other. There's no exclusions. Okay, so what is that showing us to look at that we're not looking at otherwise? Okay, so it might be uncomfortable to the ego because it's not in that little comfort zone.
Right. Right.
And typically because we're so habitualized to set our goals in life to be what the ego describes as comfortable, right? And ask 20 different people what that is, and you'll get 20 different answers, right?
Right. And it changes.
All the time. And
Right.
so, when we do that, it just, and like, it's when we take away that, oh, well, I don't need to have comfort because I'm always safe because it's all me. I create the entire reality. And when I die, I don't die. I just transition into another form of, expansive bliss. So why would I be afraid of that?
Right.
And, well, see, again, then you take away all resistance, right? Well, then we ask ourselves, Nicole said the feed froze. Interesting. It seems to be running here.
Yeah. Didn't like what we were saying.
Obviously. But the thing is, when we get to this place of allowing all that without the judgment. So it's it's something I was playing with this weekend, because there was something that I got cranky about, and I was fully aware it was all me being cranky, right?
Right. Right.
That, like, not allowing that, anxiety to be, but I did have some cranky moments, and it was funny because there was something that was really making me nuts about my husband. And I finally just acknowledged it. But I acknowledged it without any judgment. I literally just made a statement, and there was no judgment or energy behind it. The ego wanted to put it behind it, but I made the statement, right, which completed the conversation. It completed everything. And then it was like, but then it was like done, and it just had flowed by and it was gone. Right. So this is a very nice little tool to play with, honestly.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, if we look at it from the perspective of everything's just a path to where we are going, whether we remember what it is or not, allow the current to take us there.
Yeah. And it's when we put the judgments on it that we try to force direction. Right.
Right.
And if we're saying, okay, well, I'm going here, I'm just going to allow the current to optimize where I'm going. And I'm not going to attach to it. I'm not going to let it sweep me away like a riptide.
Well, and actually, if we remember in the process of all that we're everything, the current just takes us to where we are anyway.
Right.
So how can there be a right
and there's no missing there's no missing your target.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That feels really good.
Yeah, it does. It does. It makes it a whole lot easier. And the key really is recognizing that you are anxiety, but that's not all of you. It's only a tiny fleck of a fleck of a fleck. And so it's not anything that can control you if you don't let it. Right.
Right.
Especially right now, because I believe that we have a lot of big anxiety going on, really big anxiety going on collectively.
I think that there's there's such shifts happening, and we're seeing it in the external world and not acknowledging that it's actually the internal world, and all our attention is focused externally,
Yeah.
and thus creates the anxiety of, no, it's here.
Mhm. Well, and then it's, oh, the anxiety of, oh, that means I have to take responsibility for it at some
Yeah.
level. If I do that,
Yeah. Gloria had a good point. When you put judgments, you give it power.
yes. Well, yeah, and that's exactly that's what we're talking about, is that control and the limitation, right? As soon as you do
Right.
that, yeah, you push it. Once you put judgments on it, you put it outside of you. So yeah, then it does have power over you, because as soon as you put it outside of you, you believe it's not you,
Right.
and that there's something that it could do that you don't have, right?
Right.
So, you know, um, we have all that going on. It is such a big, first of all, the biggest shift is getting to that place of recognizing it's all us,
Right.
and that there's nothing that's not us.
Even even if it's distasteful to us.
Right, right. And that's even including all um, you know, there's so many things going out there on predictions and tools and all that kind of stuff. And
Right.
it's not that tools are bad, as we've always said, but it's always about remembering that what we use as reflection back to us are just simply that, they're reflections back to us. So it's our
Right.
choice of what we do about them.
Right. Right. We're not victims to the tools.
Right. We're not victims to the anxiety. We're not victims to the tools. We're not, it's the key is for us to not be victim to anything. And even if we don't remember the whole picture and our part in the whole picture in the moment, to not judge, like, like we're talking about, like Gloria was just talking about, is like the judgments is like when you have a situation, and this is something we've talked about so many times, but I feel like this is important to reiterate. When you have something in front of you and you see the situation, like I was talking about, like with my husband, and I just sort of stated it without any judgment.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing the only reaction anybody can have to it is their own judgment.
Right.
Or non-judgment. It's their choice on how they react to it, right? So if I come to it without my victimhood to it, right, saying, oh, well, this makes me angry, this whatever, because when we say that, that's when we're putting victimhood to it, is that has power over me to make me angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or just say, well, no, this is this. No, I see this. And then there's no judgment, there's no snarkiness about it. Well, then there's no reaction, because typically, how do we react to each other? From emotional reactions to judgments,
Right.
right? That create new judgments, because
Right.
no, I want to change your judgments, which usually has to do with the judgments of me, like that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And so it's the whole thing with the same thing with the anxiety. If we stop judging the anxiety and trying to analyze it and or the fear, the virus, the politics, right? Fill in the blank.
Oh, right. Exactly.
It is all about allowing it to be you, right? The thing is, like we were talking about last week, going to 90% of change and allowing the flow is not enough anymore.
Right.
Going to 99.9% isn't enough. The
Right.
key is for us to commit to 100% allowing all possibility, which means
Right.
anything that's presented to us through guidance is what we flow with. All anxiety comes from the ego, right? So it's our practice here. And I feel like this is why we're getting pushed to practice it, is because there's a lot more to come. Well, there is a lot more to come, but
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the more we become attuned to allowing it to just wash through us, flow through us, whatever word you want to use, the easily more fluid we become to just becoming the wholeness.
Well, and observing without, because the judgment part is what gets us caught up, because that's when the mind takes over and we stop flowing, right?
Right. We get that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What is this? Even if it's a good judgment, right? Like,
Right.
oh, this is cool. Like, or how about we just flow with it?
Right.
We always think of judgments as a bad thing, but we also judge things in a good way to say, oh, this is awesome, or this is amazing, or
Right.
oh, like, yeah, that's a judgment too. Like it all is perfect bliss and the wholeness, right? But when, yeah, so if we look at something as it is, and that's the key, these are the subtle fine points of what we've been talking about and what's coming to fruition. The key to hearing higher guidance and following and flowing with higher guidance is not getting distracted by those judgments, right? By those moments, right?
Right. 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 Because it does stop the flow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just like it stops the breath.
It's like when it's been years. I don't really play video games. I don't play video games at all anymore. But years ago, when it was first popular, I would play video games. And I remember there was a game, I can't even remember what the game was, but it was like flying a spaceship. It was almost like Star Wars, but it wasn't Star Wars. Where you're flying through and you have all these obstacles, and the longer you go, the faster you would go, and then the faster those things would come to you. And so the thing is, I remember I would get to a point in playing that it would almost like I'd hit the zone, right? And it would be so fluid that was like, once I hit that point, it was like I got over some kind of wall. It would be like I would relax into it, and then everything became really easy. It was so easy to win the game, right? Because then it was just like, I'm not afraid of getting like hitting this or missing that. It would just be like so flowing. And it's like, I remember that for some reason that's been coming to mind lately. And it's like, it's almost like that's what's important for us to reach now.
Right. Yeah. It's like a version of autopilot kind of thing, to where you internalize your reactions to where they become, and I always hate that second nature. But you return to your nature.
Right.
Which is not necessarily the human body.
Right. Which then that's the dissonance that we get, right? The more we get into alignment with that, then we're like, well, why am I in a body? And then there's that judgment, right?
Right.
At some level. So then it's like, okay, to say, I am all that, and I'm in a body, and I'm also 5 million other places in the multiverse, because it's all me anyway, or bajillion,
Right.
So it's, yeah, and I feel like that's what I think the key is, just to open ourselves up to allow that flow, right? Regardless of what the ego wants, because it is untraining ourselves to tighten up in that moment, right?
Yeah, it's that conditioning.
Yeah. And so, it's interesting because, in the military, they call it desensitization, right? Becoming desensitized.
Right.
Stuff.
Right.
But we judge that as bad. But it's really not, well, that's a judgment, right? It's just,
right.
In a way, that's what we're doing. Desensitizing from the ego is actually being able to continue to see things from the larger picture, and to stay in a flow that continues on in centeredness and peace, regardless of what's going on around us. And we've been asking, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do that? Well, this is what it's about. Are we able to do a factory reset on ourselves, says Michael?
Yeah, well, I think that's where we are right now. We're going back to the, factory, as in the wholeness.
Yeah.
And we're doing that reset internally. And I think that that's what all this out here.
Well, and this is all what you and I, it's like
distracting us from.
It's the totality of what you and I have been talking about for years on these podcasts and live streams.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? It's that coming to that place. And Gloria says you become more relaxed with your feelings and the life around you. Yes, because you're not judging everything or
You're in
labeling it.
acceptance.
You're in
Right.
acceptance. And wow, what an easier energy. It's so funny because what we went through Thanksgiving in the United States last week. And to some people, it's, they're upset. Some people get upset because they're with family. Some people are upset because they felt like they couldn't be with family.
Right.
Somebody, and then they're like, and then you have the others who are upset because they were family and they hated being family.
Right. Right.
And people ask me, how was your Thanksgiving? I'm like, great.
Right.
And I'm like, but we're always, we choose, like, and it doesn't even matter, has nothing to do with the world around us. We have chosen as our family to just be home on Thanksgiving, and that's what we do. And anybody's welcome to join us or not, and that's fine too. And there's no lack from that. There's no missing it or anything,
Well, and it's funny because I think if it weren't the coronavirus, it would be something else. It would be a snowstorm somewhere, or it would be money, or it would be something else that created the trauma, drama,
right,
whatever was needed for that group of individuals to come to the same place that they are right now.
Right.
And that the bottom line is what that place is what's important, not how you got there.
Yes.
Which is, what I do anytime I run into a situation like that anxiety. It's like, how I got here isn't the issue. The issue is, how do I respond to this?
Right. And whether it's funny, I want to say whether it's yours or the collective's, but there's no difference. It's yours it is yours and the collective.
Exactly.
It's like we're throwing out, like we've been talking about getting rid of some definitions that we hold us to limit ourselves. We need to it's time for us to throw out the term empath. We need to throw out the term, empath is a big one. And whether something is mine or the collective's, like it's time to throw that out too, the designation, because there's no difference. The collective is me and I'm the collective. Again, it's that allowing it to flow through and not taking it as yours to like define and control and whatever, but to just
individualize and separate. Right. It's the gosh, something just popped into my mind. It's the claiming the wholeness, accepting the wholeness, that you are that wholeness. Mm-hmm. Always. That gets rid of the judgment, that gets rid of the separation, that gets rid of the labels, it's the answer, man.
It is. And I think many don't understand the answer, but it is that simple and it is that powerful. So
which allows that simple, powerful change.
Well, because as soon as we say it's all us, right? It's all me. Then what's the specialness of the term of empath? What's the specialness of whether it's collective or individual? Like that's the implication, right? And that it's like, oh, well, I'm feeling stuff that's not mine, but there's nothing that's not yours.
Right.
The thing is, are you taking it on, even if it's not your creation, and like, from the different facets of you,
right? Are you giving it your energy?
Yeah. Are you giving it your energy as something outside of you to control you?
Right.
Because, that's so, to me, that's like, oh my God, that's a big, huge moment, because there's been so much I've been trying to explain for years. Because when I work with people who come and they're like, oh, well, I'm an empath and I can't help myself. And then I'm like, but you can. And they're like, well, you don't understand. It's like, I do, because I was born as a young child, wide open in a way that was really disconcerting. That I shut down and would not allow to come in, because I was afraid of it, that it would overwhelm me. But then I gave that power too. And then when I first had what I call my grand awakening, everything opened up again. It was like, yep, no more partitions, no more steel traps. You got to see this.
Right.
You've got to figure this out. And one of the first things I was guided to and figuring out was seeing it without taking it on its mind. And that's that's part of what I help people do. But also realizing that it is me, it's all me, but I'm just not letting it control me or be a separation from me, right? And there's a very big difference.
Right. Yeah, Nicole says wholeness was part of a conversation recently. Each is special in their own way. Well, it's like being the note in the symphony. It's
Yeah,
incomplete without each and every note.
exactly. And when
And
we
it's
created
perfect.
it, and that's why I was called this big bajillion faceted gemstone of the multiverse
Right.
that we created as our self in divine consciousness.
Right.
And you remove one facet and it's not as beautiful as what we create. I mean, or it is, but it's like, but there's no not having that.
Exactly. Right. Right.
Sort of a mind-blowing moment when you start looking at it that way, but yeah. And you're right, like we were talking about earlier here, is it's time to get out of the cycles, to accept all that, because then we realize there is no cycle because we're already where we were going.
Right. Right.
We're already outside of the tornado, except we've forgotten, you know. So, all right. So the point on that is, I guess what we're going to focus on today is for everyone to be able to see that within themselves,
Right.
to observe, just to commit to being observant and recognizing anything that comes up as a potential stopping point or a brick wall or distraction, that we can stop and look at it. I mean, here's just the practice to do: say, okay, I accept you. Thank you for being here. I accept you as part of me. I embrace you and know that we are one, and I'm going to let you do your thing and flow through and move on.
Right.
Like, and to remember how to do that and the feeling of that and what that's like in our realities, so that we then just break right out of these cycles of discomfort and anxiety, and not breaking out of the cycles of discomfort, but breaking out of the cycles of being stopped and limited and distracted by the cycles of anxiety and distractions and stuff like that. Yeah. So that we just stay observant to it and we remember how to flow through them, because the more of us individually who remember how to do that, the more complete and immediate we'll be done with the cycles. They'll be gone. I'm all for that. So
I know. Yeah.
all that in a beautiful little holiday bow.
Right. Right.
All right. So you ready? Let's go do that.
I am ready.
Whoever's listening, just, if you don't know what we're doing, it's just sit back, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and allow. Well, there was a lot of resistance there in the beginning. It's funny, my stomach started growling really loud. Did
Oh,
you hear
I
it?
could hear it. And I was like,
I was
wow.
like, what is that about? I never had that. And it only happens the last couple of weeks when we've been doing this, like, and then it stops, and it doesn't happen when I'm working, like, otherwise it's so funny. So I finally put on mute because I'm like, and then as soon as I put on mute, it stopped, which I thought was hysterical.
So you put your stomach on mute.
I put my stomach on mute too, yeah. But it was, and I'm like, well, what is that about? Well, and it's also like, well, look into your cells, because look at how much we hold in our cells that is
Yep.
not, that's in resistance, right? So it was
Well,
like,
it was funny because I saw it started out and I was looking at things that have come up for me that have been powerfully emotionally charged, and I've been judgmental. Like, you see pictures of people killing baby
right.
elephants and giraffes, and I mean that just I feel like that just crushes me. And like you said earlier, hatred and bigotry and all that, and that all, I have the same reaction. And I started looking at that and accepting that and it was really interesting because I could see it in its own little like cycle. And I would see them all as little cycles. And as soon as I acknowledged that that was part of me, it was like, and I keep coming up with this vision of, it's like somebody in an inner tube and they're swimming against the current, and they're making their own current, and they just pick up their feet.
Yeah.
And just start going with it. And I noticed that all of a sudden I had this big flotilla, all these inner tubes. And it was like, then it became bigger and bigger to the point where it was like everything, all the inner tubes were participating, and so nobody needed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And then I immediately, instead of, the round inner tubes, I started seeing like red blood cells. And I was like, yes, that's the highway in our body that connects everything. And I was like, there's that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got to the cell thing too, like in a different way. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. That was really, really, I hate to say eye-opening, but very.
It was just expansive. It was so expansive and freeing. It felt so easy. Right.
Yeah.
Truly funny that we were talking about, like when we were like, oh, we don't know what we're going to talk about. Let's just do stream of consciousness. Well, that's really what it is all about. It's stream of consciousness, right?
Exactly.
There.
Yeah. Yep.
I love when that kind of stuff just always comes together. But yeah, so that's what everyone's to play with this week is be really aware of everything that comes in.
Right.
And welcome it, embrace it as you, and let it go about its thing and move on. Like that's how I was like, move on and complete itself. And then you don't have any resistance, because it's resistance that causes disease.
Right.
It's toxins, it's negative, like negativity that we hold on to in ourselves. Stagnation. Yeah. So, and Sarah and I are working on our immunity consciousness online course, which will be available soon. Which really talks about a lot of this too. Funny enough, I just realized, oh wait, this ties in.
Yeah, it does.
Shameless plug right there. And so yeah, like just be observant to all that in yourself. Be observant to all that in your consciousness. And instead of saying, oh, well, I'm an empath, I have to do this, or I have no control over it, then it's like, you know what, throw that away and just say, you know what, it's all me.
Right.
It's just how I choose to interact with it. Or as it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds, and the ego is going to fight you for a while. I think the ego is going to say, no, that's illogical. That doesn't work that way. And it's like,
does not compute.
It does not compute, because the ego is, its whole exploration has been in identity and separation. So when you're doing things from wholeness, it says, I just don't understand. This doesn't work.
Right.
So that's where you get the dissonance inside. And so you can say, okay, no, I appreciate it. And you're a part of the wholeness too, in separation, as separation, kind of.
Right.
So, all right. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. That was fabulous. Fabulous. And we'll talk to you next week. Probably together.
That's right. Same place.
Same place. All right, everyone. Have a great one. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evagnoni.
signing off on this week's Living the Shift. Not Living the Shift, the wrong one. Ascended World. Signing off on this week's Ascended World. Collective Energy Share. We'll see you next time.